Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Uh, im- my name is Jenna Quinn, and it's my pleasure as the Assistant Director of Alumni and Affinity Engagement to welcome you all to this edition of the 49er Industry Chat Series. Just so everyone is aware, the session is being recorded. So what that really means for you is that it's going to be available for you on demand on our website at www.csuob.edu/alumni. So feel free to watch it again or share it with a friend or a colleague or anyone you think might get something good out of it. And with that, I am very happy to introduce our alumni speaker today, Christopher Chavez. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, no, thank you. Look, so let me just read a little bit about your bio to get everyone kind of acclimated to who you are, and we'll get started.
Great.
So Chris has worked on some of the biggest environmental policies in California. Since 2017, Chris has served as the Deputy Policy Director at Coalition for Clean Air, or CCA, an environmental advocacy nonprofit dedicated to protecting air quality, improving public health, and preventing climate change. During that time, Chris has worked to ensure that billions of dollars in state climate funds benefit polluted, vulnerable communities, led successful state and local ballot measure campaigns, and played a key role in the adoption of landmark air quality rules for locomotives, warehouses, and refineries. Prior to CCA, Chris worked as a legislative aide for State Senator Fran Pavley, retired, staffing her on transportation, local government, and the Senate floor. Additionally, Chris served as a Senate fellow for then State Senator Alex Padilla, and staffed legislation that improved rail service in Southern California and created the first in nation protections for student athletes. Chris's career as an advocate, however, started at Cal State Long Beach, where he served as president of the Associated Students and California's State Student Association. Chris has a BA in political science from Cal State Long Beach and is a member of the City of Long Beach's Parks, Recreation, and Marine Commission. Chris, that is a mile long bio. You are one busy guy.
I like to keep my time pretty well booked up. So
Well, I mean, I think it definitely shows, and I think that with a lot of the work that you do, it's kind of definitely needed, right?
yeah, and so we know that obviously the climate crisis is an existential risk, really to our civilization, our way of life. But what we also need to remember is that California, particularly Southern California, is home to the dirtiest air in the nation. So we always hear about California being this climate leader, which is very much true. However, when you look at the different air quality standards that are out there in terms of smog, when you see things like particulate matter, we actually are well behind the rest of the nation just because of the enormity of the challenges that we face. Transportation is a huge contributor to that. The Los Angeles region is home to one of the largest manufacturing bases outside in the United States. We are home to the two largest ports in the world. 40% of all imports come through the Port of Los Angeles and Port of Long Beach. And while all those things, are part of California's economy and California's identity in many ways, at the same time, they, generate air pollution. And that air pollution burden is not shared equally. Low-income communities, communities of color, tend to be the most impacted. And those are also the most vulnerable because they have other factors impacting them and their quality of health and ultimately how long they're living. It's really, unfortunate, and this is why it's important for our policies to not just take into effect economic considerations, but also the impacts on public health and the impacts on equity.
Absolutely. Well, that's certainly important work, but if you'll permit me, I'd love to kind of rewind the clock a little bit and just kind of ask you about your background and what your life and experiences were like that led you to come to CSULB in the first place.
So I'm a Long Beach kid. I grew up in Long Beach. I'm very much a local. I still live in the same community that I grew up in the Wrigley neighborhood. So very much a fan and a devotee of the city and what it represents. So I really, when I did go up to Sacramento for 5 years after graduating from Cal State Long Beach, but when I was looking for a place of my own, I knew I wanted to come back home to Long Beach. uh I think for me, I've always had an interest in politics and policy. I remember when I was a kid, I wrote to Vice President Al Gore at the time. I got involved with politics in high school, and it really wasn't until I was about 15 where a teacher of mine, when I was still in high school, said, "Hey, this is." I asked her; she's a career counselor, and she said something. I asked her, "Is this something that I could actually make a career at?" And she said, "Well, you're obviously interested in it. Why not?" And I think that was very direct, frank, and to the point advice that I kind of took and ran with. In terms of Cal State Long Beach, I think I got to work on some really neat things as a student advocate, such as the lights along Bellflower Boulevard was one of the very first things that I got to be involved with. Originally, there were no lights. There had been some safety incidents back then, and we worked with the city, we worked with the local community to get those lights installed. Going up to Sacramento and advocating for funding for the Cal State system, advocating for legislation that benefits CSU students and really all students in California's higher education system, was really instrumental in getting to learn how to be an effective advocate, how to work with different stakeholders at that time, whether it was university administration, students, staff, faculty. It really kind of gave me the experience I needed to understand that policy, that sort of environment where you're working together is really part and parcel of being able to create the change that you want to see in this world.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think that really does speak to, a well-rounded experience as a student, right?
Right.
Um, would you, share a little bit more about what your student experience was like? I mean, being so involved with ASI, and the professors that you had here, the students that you interacted with, how did all of that student experience, what was it like and how did it, translate going forward?
So it was very, a very good experience. So I was, yes, I was definitely involved with ASI. I was also involved with the Latino student organizations on campus, going to their meetings, their events. And really that's kind of where I really feel like I got kind of like my start at was with them, with student organizing and getting a better grasp, better exposure to different cultures within the Latino community, getting to hear about different experiences, the undocumented experience, learning more about that, and what those students faced, was certainly, I think, a very educational experience, but also, getting to learn more about myself in that process, whether it was through ASI, whether it was through the Latino student orgs, just being able to kind of learn what things worked for me, which things didn't, which things I wanted to improve upon. Getting that sort of feedback from students or from professors, whether they knew they were giving me that feedback or not, I think was again, it was a very educational experience. And I think if anything, that is one thing I would certainly encourage, understanding that not every student has the ability to live at home. Not every student has has the ability to really immerse themselves into that college experience. If they do have that ability, trying to find opportunities, trying to make opportunities to get involved on campus is very, I think, very important and very rewarding. I remember when I first started at Cal State Long Beach, I started out as a DJ on the our student radio station, which was then known as K Beach at the time. Now it's 22 West. And getting to realize I kind of like being able to share music and being able to talk on the fly and things like that. It's like, okay, that was a fun experience, a neat experience. And some of those skills that I learned through that process, I was able to kind of carry forward with me as well. So yeah, just looking for those opportunities and creating opportunities, creating time to where you can to really get that sort of campus experience is helpful. It's important, and it's far more rewarding than what you may realize in the moment. It's not just something fun, but you're actually getting to learn some cool stuff in it too.
Yeah. And meet some cool people along the way, I'm sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. I still am friends with many of the people who I met at Cal State Long Beach. I probably say the bulk of my friends are from my time at Cal State Long Beach, and very much keep in touch with them and keep them part of my life.
Yeah, that rocks.
Mhm.
I now I kind of want to ask you, everyone's time at Cal State Long Beach eventually does come to an end.
Mhm.
Um, and for you, what was that first step like? What was that first job or that first opportunity? And then what were how did that grow afterwards?
Yeah. So fortunately I did have a little bit of work experience. So I, managing credit cards, managing stuff like that it was certainly important. It took more importance when I moved out and went to Sacramento for 5 years, learning how to put together a budget and stick to it. Uh I would say that the biggest adjustment was being away from being in a community that I'd so thoroughly enmeshed myself in, and having to reinvent that in a completely different city, in a completely different part of the state, and in a different environment. One of the interesting things is that when you do go out into that the real world, it is far more different. It's far different than what you would even, what you'd see in the college environment, where you have support staff that are there to kind of help make sure you don't go astray, or you have a support staff there that are there to support you in some, trying times and some challenging situations. Uh, it's that sense of, oh, this staff member or this professor that I know, I could go to them with problems or concerns or thoughts I might have, questions I might have. That support network is not immediately available when you're outside, after you graduate. I think what's important again is making sure you're maintaining those connections as much as possible. So when you do have those challenges, when you do have a rough patch, that you're able to, tap into those networks, and really kind of keep them up to date of what's going on, and you're able to use them to utilize those connections to really kind of think through and work through those challenges.
Yeah, no, for sure. And when folks are looking to, find those opportunities, um, post graduation, do you have any advice for where they should be looking, especially if they're interested in going into policy and advocacy like you?
Yeah. So hey, that's a very good question. We always kind of there's been an unfortunate, I think there's an unfortunate perception out there that you are either locked into your major, or you have to whatever you study in college is only good for one or two careers. To be honest, I was not initially planning on myself to be in the environmental field. I actually, when I graduated from Cal State Long Beach and during most of my time in Sacramento, I was primarily interested in education, in higher education policy specifically, because I'd already kind of built up a work and a comfort level working in that field. However, what I did have was also a big love, a big interest in transportation related issues. And when I was in Sacramento, I worked on transportation related things and ultimately met the organization that I work for now through some of the bills that I was working on back then. And it really kind of meshed with an interest that I really didn't indulge in or didn't really think about much when I was even in college. So being able to kind of find that connection, and kind of I hesitate to use the term stumbling into it, but certainly seeing an opportunity and realizing, hey, this is actually something that's aligned with what I'm passionate about. To kind of the question directly, I think one of the big things is realizing that a lot of it is about transferable skills. So if you are in a generalist field, or if you're in like a liberal arts field, or if you're in a field that is not specialized per se in a specific science or a specific career focus, looking at what skills that you are learning, what skills that you do have, that you're getting through your education, and looking how those are applied in different venues, how those are applicable in different careers, so that you kind of think, okay, I know how to do research. There is a lot of demand for researchers. You are interested in event planning. There's ways that you can use your career, your major to further your career by looking at event planning. I think really the important thing is being able to kind of identify what are some of those major things that drive you, that are you're interested in, what skills that you're gaining through that educational experience, and how do you connect those into a career. I would also say, if you are very interested in a specific career, like if you want to work in politics and policy or environmental issues, look early on. Well, I should say the earlier the better, but look for opportunities within that field to really to really invest in and apply for as part of your post-graduation plan. So for me, it wasn't like I just showed up to Sacramento and said, hey, hire me. I did the Capital Fellows program. I had learned about the Capital Fellows program, I want to say my junior year in college, my third year in college. And being able to see, oh, this program is actually, helps place you at the state capitol and this legislative staff office. And it really just seemed kind of a natural progression for the things I was interested in. I also applied to a couple other programs as well, to have multiple irons in the fire, so to say. But really being able to kind of find those opportunities and look for those opportunities where it's kind of, again, what your interest is in, where your passion lies. It seems to be like in a career that you find rewarding. I think being able to really track down those opportunities and making a plan after you graduate is really going to be key to long-term success, regardless of what major you're in.
For sure. No, it's great advice. So for your current position, right, as the deputy policy director at the Coalition for Clean Air, what does a typical day look like, right? Like, I think for folks, they may think like, oh, I want to go into this space, or I want to, this is an area of interest that interests me. But maybe a lot of folks aren't so familiar of what does the day to day actually look like.
Right. So it's a it can vary a lot. I will be frank, it's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of meetings. But at the same time, I think there's some value in that, because over during my time with Coalition for Clean Air, during my time working in environmental advocacy, you get to see a lot of the same people in different venues, different settings. You get to be friends with them, you get to chat with them, you look forward to seeing them. So being able to sort of to relish and kind of enjoy that camaraderie between different advocates, because we're all not working for the same organization, I think is certainly makes the day more, adds to the day, I think is a better way of putting it. I think the other thing too is like knowing that it's not just going to be this one meeting that solves everything. It's not going to be this one meeting where we plot out the whole plan to prevent climate change. Knowing it's going to be a long, long ongoing fight. I know for myself, I've talked to a couple of friends. They say, "Yo, you've been working on something for 2 or 3 years. I don't know if I'd have the patience for that." But the truth is, when you're talking about big policy, when you're talking about multiple stakeholders, when you're talking about things that could have an economic impact, it needs to be thought out very carefully. It needs to meet all the legal requirements, all the legislative requirements that are set out when they develop policy. It needs to, there is a very specific process that needs to be followed. And yeah, it can be slow. It can be difficult sometimes. It's a lot of details sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, what are the things that we are really pushing for, and being able to continue to push that message that this is what we need to have healthy air in Southern California. Is really kind of the overarching theme, the overarching drive, the message that you want to convey. I would also say that we get to do some really cool stuff. So recently we did what we referred to as a solutions tour. Some folks, particularly organizing space, may be familiar with the concept of a toxics tour, where they look at pollution sources in the community. What we did is one of our new staff members came up with this idea, which is brilliant. It's just, how about we flip the script and show where we are getting clean transportation investments, clean technology investments in the community. So we took a tour of the ports, we took a tour of rail yards, we took a tour of EV or electric vehicle charging spaces for trucks, and to really show this is happening. This is actually out here. The technology is here. We just need to support it. We need to nurture it. We need to make sure that people know that this is something that these investments are actually in our community, and try to replicate that success elsewhere. So I felt that was a very good way to really highlight the positive impact that some of this, these people hear about, large amounts of federal dollars coming in for climate protections, or there's large amounts of state dollars also for climate protections, being able to show the tangible impacts, the actual infrastructure that's going in place has an impact.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And with that, right, with nonprofit work and, particularly in a space where solutions are 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years out, I think that there's a lot of question around work-life balance and burnout. How do you personally manage work-life balance and the issue of burnout?
So, as I mentioned earlier, not one meeting is going to solve the problem. Not one staff member is going to solve the problem either. I do not have all the information. I don't have all the solutions needed to really highlight what needs to be done, or to plot out the course for what needs to be done. I think one is having a realistic expectation of yourself and of other advocates, and just knowing that you are a voice, an important voice, but you are a voice in the process. And actually, let's take it even more, back a little bit further. Let's just say you're an average person that's concerned, that you're not even interested in doing this as a career, but you have major concerns about the climate crisis, or about air quality, or water pollution, or whatever. The important thing is that policy decisions need to know you care. It's easy to write it off. Oh, they're not going to listen to me. They don't care. There's no point in discussing it. But they actually do, because there are, especially in California, major pollution challenges in this area. And being able to say, yes, yeah, it's great that we're doing so much on climate, but what about our air quality? What about our water pollution, etc.? Being able to come at that message and show not just that it's a concern, but actually having an impact on your life, I think it's important to communicate. And just knowing it's not going to be a one-off. It's not going to be something where you just send an email, tweet at, post at, whatever you want to, your social media venue of choices, of being able to say, hey, this is a problem. It's going to require constant engagement. And I'm not just saying, typing missives all the time. I mean, that there's a use for that. But what I will say is being able to go and meet them personally, go to their open town hall forums and say, hey, this is a problem. Being a constant presence in ways that and it doesn't always require money. It requires time, but it doesn't always require money. Is I think adds a human element to that that issue. Again, showing how your life is being directly impacted. In some ways, it's more it creates more of a human impact if you're showing how your health is being harmed than being able to say this is a risk to all of us, because it's directly there in your face to say, this is actually something that people are being impacted by. I myself grew up with asthma. So I have firsthand experience of knowing what it's like not being able to breathe. It's being able to convey those lived experiences, again, has value in articulating and for putting forward the message and concern that you want to put there to decision makers. Now, when you're talking about kind of, we were talking, so now that we're talking about as far as actually, my apologies, I had to edit this. So what was I kind of get lost track with the question there.
Oh yeah, no, a question about how you personally handle
Work-life balance, yeah.
work-life balance, burnout.
Yeah. So kind of directly to the question about work-life balance and burnout. So like I said, you're not going to be able to solve every single problem that we're facing, or the issue that you're focused on. I would say, one, again, have reasonable expectations of yourself. To prioritize what you want to work on. So when you put out a general vision, a general goal out there, you're going to get generalized results. So if you're kind of if you focus in on specific issues, like I don't like how my community is exposed to freeway pollution, for example. I don't like how this community doesn't have access to clean water. Being able to really focus on a specific problem and provide a specific solution is important. And when I say a specific solution, it's not like we need to fix everything. It's this is how we fix it and this is how we fund it. I think that there's a good saying is that the price of a successful attack is the need for a constructive alternative. So being able to provide that constructive alternative is important. And then ultimately realizing at the end of the day is that you need to also make time for yourself. You need to make sure that you are really kind of making some space, making some time, and investing in yourself, not just in the career sense, but also in the quality of life sense. I remember one time that I was on a work call and we were doing like a icebreaker. And they're like, oh, what hobbies do you like to do? And I was kind of at a loss for words because I didn't know. I kind of got so enmeshed with my work. I kind of realized that work was starting to become like my identity in my life. So I said, okay, I need to start really focusing on developing some hobbies. So I had long been interested in photography. So kind of, took out my old camera from when I was in college and started taking pictures and just kind of went out. And if I see something I like, taking pictures, which led to looking for more places to go out and, take hikes and walk in so I can get some cool pictures. being able to reconnect it with things that you enjoyed in the past. I've become a big fan of video games again in my late middle 30s, early late 30s, just because it was, it's fun, it's enjoyable, and it's like, I work hard. I am proud of my work, but that gives me some time to enjoy some stuff that I enjoyed from the past. So it's I take no shame, no qualms about getting back into old video games. So just I think really just again finding those some things that aren't associated with work are important because it makes you a more well-rounded person, makes you a more interesting person, not just for others, but also yourself. Concerts. I love going to concerts. I recently took my mom to a concert because she had a lot of passion for music, and I kind of got that as well. And yeah, it's just again, it's just looking for those little things in life that really you enjoy. And again, I understand that there is a certain amount of privilege in being able to say, I can have the time or I have the money to be able to indulge in these hobbies. But I think that there is really something in being able to delve into things that develop you as a person rather than just work, 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 work all the time.
Yeah, no. And that's really, I think, sound advice. So I have a kind of a two-parter question. And it's one of my favorites to ask. And so I'll start with the more negative one, which is what is the most challenging part of your job?
I would say the most challenging thing is the sheer magnitude of what we are working on. And what I mean by that is it's not just, oh, this is it absolutely is, this idea that the climate crisis is not just idea, but the fact that the climate crisis is an existential threat, but it's also working on things like the state budget. For example, it's a lot of details. As somebody who's not a math person, who never has been a math person, I get to work a lot on state budget issues. I would say that that's not the reason why we have funding shortfalls. I'm not the one that writes it. I just review it and make and comment on it. But I think that it's really the amount of work that's out there exceeds the capacity of any one organization or any one or person. That's why you kind of have to focus in on specific areas. Is that I could talk a lot about the state budget. I couldn't tell you much about what's happening at the Transportation Commission because I just don't cover that area, and I don't really have the capacity to really focus in on that particular agency. So it really is kind of finding something and making it your own. Or if you're given an assignment, being able to say, okay, this is what the assignment is. I'm going to delve into it. But even then, it still can be an overwhelming. It can be overwhelming sometimes. Just to be perfectly blunt, perfectly honest. I've also voiced that with my organization is that for during the COVID years. I was covering basically two and a half positions because we had a vacancy that happened. And, at the beginning of 2020, I'm like, all right, this is job security, but wanted to cover two positions. But then by year 3 of that, I said, okay, I need some help here. So fortunately, we were in the position of being able to have another staff member take some of that load off. But like I said, I would say that's kind of the biggest challenge is to really have the capacity to work on these issues and put as much dedication in them that's necessary.
Well, then the second part to that, little brighter, what is the most rewarding part of your job?
So I would say so there's the fun side, like the tour I was mentioning, and I got to climb up in an electric train and kind of see a locomotive and kind of like get to go in the cab and see all that cool stuff, or walk under these giant cranes. That was really neat. Getting to take a tour of the of LA Metro's regional connector and like walk through a future subway tunnel. That was really cool. There are some really cool things in that. But I would say that the biggest sort of satisfaction that I get, the coolest part is knowing that the work I'm doing is actually benefiting the community that I grew up in. So, I grew up in the Wrigley neighborhood, which is the western side of Long Beach. You have the west side, you have Wrigley, you have the downtown neighborhoods, Wilmore, Washington. Um, and those are, truly very polluted communities, because you're not just dealing with the ports, you're dealing with the freeways, you're dealing with rail yards, you're dealing with the oil refineries. And yes, all those sources are, tied into the economy in the region. Totally recognize that. But again, when you look at the air pollution in those communities, there's definitely an impact in terms of a shorter lifespan, in terms of a lower quality of life. And we need to make sure that those issues are being addressed and in a restorative way, where we're actually trying to undo the harms to the communities that live there. Knowing that many of these communities are formerly racially redline communities. So a century ago, we had there was a policy basically that discriminated against certain communities because of the populations that live there. So, for example, Wilmington was a red line community. And it was a predominantly Latino community back then, Latino Japanese community at that time. It's still predominantly Latino community today. And so many of the decisions, many of the decisions that were made a century ago are still impacting people today. So knowing that I'm working on trying to improve those conditions, trying to undo some of those harms, and that being the community I grew up in West Long Beach, Wilmington. I have a lot of family in Wilmington. I think that is really where is the most rewarding part of my work is actually, and seeing those impacts, seeing those differences coming into light, especially having been at my organization for a while and now starting to see some of the things that we were working on coming to fruition is really a rewarding experience.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you are definitely someone who is very involved in the community. So I'd like to ask a little bit about your involvement on the Parks Rec and Marine Commission of Long Beach. How did you get involved in that? And how do you feel that it, supports or augments or just in any way relates to your career goals?
So I got to the Parks Commission. Basically, there a couple terms were ending, and they were looking for replacement commissioners in those positions. And I had done some work with the city. We have one of the staffers at the time reached out to me. I had applied previously as well. So and anybody can actually apply to be a city commissioner, just to let you know. And there are city commission openings. So if you are interested in that, it's a good opportunity to kind of learn how cities operate. You can apply, just send your resume to the mayor's office. And the person that contacted me suggested I apply for it. I did. The mayor at the time, Robert Garcia, appointed me to it. And it was funny. I was looking at a couple of different commissions, and the one I ultimately got was Parks, and I didn't realize how much I would enjoy it, how thoroughly I love the Parks Commission, because I think the real neat thing that I've gotten to see is all the cool engagement, all the neat community stuff that people are doing, or that community groups are doing in the neighborhoods, and really how parks serve as a nucleus, as a center for the community. I've gotten particularly involved with a park called Willow Springs Park in Long Beach. It's become like my passion project. There's a new Friends of Willow Springs group that I've got involved with, and I really want to make sure that this park has has the investments it needs to really thrive as a park, and basically taking a former oil site and turning it into this gym in the middle of the city, I think is phenomenal. Um, I think that how this also connects with some of my environmental concerns is the importance of green space in the community. Being able to have park space is very important. And really, I mean, the communities that are most environmentally impacted also tend to have least amount of trees. They tend to have the least amount of parks. If you look at a map of Long Beach, most of our parks are centered or are located on the southern side of the city, and there's less park access on the western and central and northern parts of the city. So how do we make sure that our parks are, more accessible to everybody in Long Beach? How do we make sure that they're accessible to different communities, the disabled community, for example? How are our parks responding to their needs? Being able to support community organizations and doing programming that's responsive to the interests of the community, I think is also just it's one of those facets where it kind of ties into this notion, this idea that just as there's a saying, all politics is local, but the environment is local too. And if we are having a local environment that is basically up to what the people of Long Beach deserve. So I've really enjoyed the Parks Commission. It really kind of has given me a new perspective in really the role that parks have in the community and how cities serve their constituents.
So, how important is mentorship in your
Mhm.
field? And do you have any mentors or do you have anyone that you're mentoring?
So yeah, actually, mentorship I think is a very useful process and very useful tool. So what I would say is when I was back in student government, the vice president for student services at the time, Dr. Doug Robinson, I think many people in student government would agree that he was a mentor to all of us. But being an exec at the time, I got to work directly with him, not just in a kind of advisory sort of feedback way, but also like in terms of actually producing results for the students. One of the things I'm most proud of at my time at Cal State Long Beach and student government is working with Dr. Robinson, the university president at the time, Dr. Alexander, and really, developing a plan with the students for one of the cultural resources centers on campus. At that time, that's the resource center, now the Fuerza Resource Center. And actually developing a plan to get new furniture, new computers, and paint, and really trying to make that center better was really neat. So it was like it wasn't just a matter of going up to the university administration saying, "Hey, give us this." It was a matter of working with the students to put together our proposal, to put together our plan, delivering to the university and showing that this is something that the students care about and this is something that they should act on. And some people might kind of say, "Oh, well, the university should just do that anyways." What I would argue though is that in having us put together a proposal was also a very educational experience, because again, it wasn't just a matter of showing up and asking for X, Y, and Z, but was showing up, asking for X, Y, and Z, how we were going to take care of X, Y, and Z, and really showing why X, Y, and Z were needed, which is all important stuff when you're in the working professional world. So I actually am very proud of the work that we did, and I'm grateful for the university just saying, put us together a proposal. They didn't give us any grief when we gave them the proposal. They were like, "This is great. Let's go ahead and do it," and we got it. Now, I know the center has seen a lot of use between since then, so I don't know the current condition of it, but I know that being able to develop that and work with the university again, it not just as a kind of interactive mentorship was a very positive experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, believe it or not, we are coming up close on to time. And so what I want to ask you to close is, if you had a piece of advice for for a beach grad who is just probably like almost at that finish line, right? And they're interested in policy, politics, advocacy space. What's one piece of advice that you would give them as they're just starting out?
I would say, um, don't be too intimidated by it. Know that you're dealing with some serious stuff. You're dealing with things that can have an impact on people's lives. But know that it is not going to all hinge on you. It is all not all going to be, all at your feet. What I'll also say on that too is on the flip side, it's not inaccessible to you. There are ways that you can get your foot in the door. There are ways that you can position yourself to be better in a position to where you can help make some of these policy changes, where you can be a voice in the room. Uh, but it takes time, it takes involvement, it takes a level of commitment that can sometimes not seem like, why do we need to do this? The fact is that when we're talking about policy makers, they're not just dealing with one issue. That issue may be the most important thing to you, but they're dealing with economic issues, they're dealing with public safety issues, they're dealing with educational issues, they're dealing with a ton of different issues, a ton of different constituencies, and all of them believe that their one issue is the most important thing in the world. Um, I'm not in the position of being able to say whether an issue is more important or not. But being able to be that consistent voice and saying, this is something that we need to act on, this is how we act on it, I think is, and being realistic about it, and both in terms of what you're asking for and the time frames that you're asking for. Um, you know, decision makers respond better to reasonable requests than they do to requests to ask to completely change everything in the last minute or in a short amount of time. So just being aware of those constraints and those other factors that you're competing with, I think are key to being to really placing yourself in a position to where you can have an impact. Being able to again identify those opportunities where you're able to get your foot in the door, be in the room. I think that is also another way to really have an impact or make sure that you have an impact. Knowing it's not just a one and done thing, but it's constant is going to be, I think, what I would say to kind of budding advocates who are looking to get in this field.
Awesome. Well, that is some sound advice. And thank you so much for your time, Chris. I think this has been very informative. And just a great opportunity to hear about your story and kind of the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for
Yeah,
that.
I appreciate that. And just one last thing I would note is that like for me, I was a Cal Grant student, so I was I think that there's a lot of perception that you need to have a ton of connections right off the bat. I've been able to, I think, do fairly well despite not being from a politically connected family or a family that was reliant on college financial aid. So I think that is it certainly helps to have those connections a lot, but there are ways around them. So
Awesome. No, that's enlightening and also uplifting, right? You don't
yeah,
necessarily need to start out with them. It's something you can build.
exactly.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for your time. And for those of you who tuned in, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, this has been recorded, so this will be available to you on our website at www.csulb.edu/alumni. And I'm also going to encourage you all to follow us on social media. We're at CSULB Alumni on all platforms. So that way you can stay connected, stay engaged, and reach out to us and make sure that you don't miss the next awesome edition of the 49er Industry Chat. But Chris, if folks wanted to connect with you and maybe pick your brain or ask you a couple more questions, how might they be able to get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn. I do have a LinkedIn profile under Christopher Chavez. And I also can be reached at chris@ccair.org.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chris, again, and thank you all so much for tuning in. Until next time, have a good one.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.